Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the EduCASTsyon podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Samuel Torres, along with my co host.
Tina Silverio. And picking up from our last session, we have another guest who will be sharing his insights from his transitioning from rural to an urban and educational setting. In today's episode, we shall be taking a look at how different educational settings affect a student's learning behavior and how it develops the foundation and its influence in their development from an early age.
So, our guest for today has had a lot of experiences in his time switching from an urban to rural institution and vice versa in his time as a student. Currently, he is a first year undergraduate student taking up BS Hotel and Restaurant Management culinary track at the College of St. Benilde.
Let's now introduce our guest, Christan Sam Castro.
Hello again, Kristen. How are you feeling today?
Right now, feeling kind of stress. Feeling some sort of stress and regret because right now I should have started off with some of my other recs, but I chose to slack off anyway. So, uh, but towards this podcast, I guess I'm ready to go.
All right. Hopefully, you get to do your modules again later. But still, thanks for giving us the time to do this podcast, this episode, even if you have a lot of things to do. But just to give our audiences a little bit of a background, what schools have you studied in, and what grade were you in when you studied in these institutions?
And during my elementary days, I was in Diliman Preparatory School in Quezon City when I was in the first grade. Then I transferred back here in Pangasinan at the School of San Carlos. And then once I got to the 11th grade, I transferred to UST. And by the 12th grade, I transferred back to Pangasinan in Edna School of Dagupan, this time, Dagupan.
I
Yeah.
see. And what was the reason of your first transfer, or actually all of your transfers? If you can elaborate on them quickly. And what was the reason that made you switch back and forth?
For the first grade, I am not so sure why I transferred, but I guess it's because my mom and my grandmother lived together at one point, and I just joined them. I really
Mhm.
didn't have much control about with that, but yeah. But besides that, or rather, once I got to the second grade, once I transferred back to Pangasinan, they mentioned something about me being able to speak well in English. So, knowing that Edna's school is a school that promotes the English language, I guess Peter is he kind of disagrees with that since he too is a former
Yeah.
alumnus.
I used to study there too. He's a year younger than I am.
Oh, I
He,
see. I see.
yeah, and since they are known for that, they chose they pretty much told me to or asked me if I wanted to transfer going there during the second grade. So I did. And once I finished the 10th grade, once I got to the 11th grade to USC, I transferred there because one thing is that one thing that I really emphasized to my parents is that I really wanted to know how to live by myself, live to live in the urban setting, just to get a glimpse of how I will be in the future once I get back to face and going back to Benilde and everything. Take doing all my lab work, doing all my requirements in the school per se in
All right.
Manila. Yeah.
That's a really good mindset, wanting to transfer to an urban institution to have a live off some form of independency. So when you studied in UST, you lived on your own, or who were you at the time?
Actually, I was with a roommate. I would say technically that I lived by myself because most of the time he would be out by the time that I go back home, and most of the time comes home later compared to me. So by the time we get to the morning, because we kind of have different sleep schedules, by the time we get to the morning, I wouldn't see him in the condo. So I would say I lived by myself.
All right. So you didn't necessarily have any family members or siblings that you lived with
Oh,
during your
I did
time.
not live with any other siblings that time. I was with a roommate. He was my classmate when I was in Edna San Carlos.
Mhm.
Yeah, pretty much it. He
Well, how was your experience transitioning back and forth? Like, did you experience any culture shock, for instance?
Ooh, to be honest about that, I really didn't experience much of that culture. I didn't really get that much of an impact towards that culture shock thing. Well, it really depends toward on the person. For my case, I really did not feel that much of a culture shock because I already had some experience talking to other people, talking to different people. Yeah, experience to a diverse amount of people. Not only in real life, but as well as the online setting because I play a lot of video games online and I tend to talk to other people from other countries. So then I was able to develop an early skill of being able to communicate well with other people.
That's great. Transitioning wise, is there anything you'd like to share about your experience?
Ooh, all right. So, transitioning to an urban setting. One thing I noticed is how different the curriculum is. Just by the schedule itself. Like when I was in USC, we only went to school 3 days. We went to school on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Friday. No, Saturdays rather. Monday, Wednesday, Saturdays, if I as I could recall. And the rest of the days, that's why right now, just another side note, that's why I'm not so overwhelmed by the online setting of going of classes because in UST there are already online modules given early then because synchronous and asynchronous those are not new because USC already had them beforehand and and towards my living in the urban setting, of course, I had to cook my own meals, which isn't much of a problem since I myself love to cook. Uh, and also when it comes to buying food buying food out, kind of had a good time because I lived in a place. If I lived in the condo where I stayed was close uh, to this whole block or rather whole street full of restaurants and restaurants, bars and everything. Like it's called Tomas Morato Avenue. If you guys know, you guys know.
Right, right.
Yes. Uh, because of that, of course, food wasn't much of a problem. The only problem was, of course, my expenses. I had to live by an allowance, a certain amount of allowance that I had to track. Because without tracking, you may find yourself in a sticky situation. In other words, you're probably going to be broke.
Right. Okay,
Uh,
so just to add to that, in terms of the environment naman, how was it like? The
Oh,
difference? Yeah.
well, of course, you had to meet new people. Therefore, you had to adjust to their diversities. So again, like right, what I did is just I based on my intuition, I made sure that I chose the right friends, meaning uh, meaning those people who will influence me to the point that I won't just be going out partying and everything. Sure, I could go out, I could enjoy, spend some time with myself and with friends. But of course, you have to balance. I made sure that we would be able to balance everything, academics, projects, and everything with with including the lifestyle.
Do you think
Yeah.
your experiences yourself can generalize a good number or majority of other students transferring from rural to urban areas? Or would you say that this is somehow a very special or rare experience for yourself?
For me, this is well, again, just as I said a while ago, it really depends on the person. There would be people who would be able to adjust, just like myself, and of course, there would be people who'd probably be overwhelmed or be overgrown by all the things that are happening around them, or by all the the peer pressures. Peer pressure, probably be they'd probably be going out drinking and doing drugs or everything. I know in my class who've been influenced because of drugs. So of course, no name dropping, no name dropping.
Yeah,
We're
we're
good,
not
we're
gonna
good.
have that here. But was there anything in particular that made either rural or urban areas stand out? Like the ease of accessibility of certain establishments for learning or the tranquility of the area? Which aspects gave you the most satisfaction as a student?
Oh, okay. Well, in terms of being able to access, or like being able to get the things that I actually needed, because I was quite close to malls, just like SM North EDSA, just like um to many national bookstore joints, because my condo actually had the national bookstore below it, so I was able to get the things that I really needed. And it really depends on the area, because of course there are also some people naman in the rural areas who are able to have access to to the things that they actually need, from food to school supplies, to repair shops, to pretty much everything. Well, as for me naman, here right now here, it would take I guess a 10-minute drive going to the bayan, and to get the things that I need for school and everything. So in terms of uh, in terms of being able to get the things that I need, it really depends. It really depends on the person. Talaga.
So, can you say for certain na the culture in these different places affect the learning capabilities of a student and how one can be politically awakened? Like for example, in the National Capital Region, 'di ba mas concentrated talaga doon, and yeah, does living there influence your political views and whatnot?
To be honest, back in the day when I was in the 11th grade, I wasn't so politically involved. I deemed myself as apolitical, but I've noticed a lot of my classmates and a lot of my blockmates, a lot of my friends were there, other sections, who were were really getting into these issues about the government, from the EJKs, from um, the Phil health situation and everything. Well, again, if this one person really wants to dive into it, well, especially knowing the fact that they are around a different environment as opposed to the rural areas, most likely yes, they would. For my
All
case,
right.
though, not really.
All right, that's a very unique view on it, and you know that was before. But how about now? Do you still deem yourself as apolitical now?
Oh, right now, no, I do not. I right now I've matured to or to know myself better, and knowing myself better is to to deliberate with what kind of environment I would like to live in. So knowing that, I I know that I must choose the people who will not, or who will not tolerate corruption, most likely, and to cast all of those plunders, cast all of the corrupt back to where belong, and that is in jail, which I do not see right now, because all of them are being released by the current government, and knowing that that in itself is already fishy. We really need to be sure that uh, we be able to vote wisely, being able to vote the people who truly deserve their position, and not just through donation drives, or not just by uh, all those pamigay ng pera. You have to be sure.
All right. But moving along from politics, to go on to, does being in a city or does being in a relatively urbanized area surrounded by large companies and being in the center of businesses make you more advanced than those in learning in rural areas?
Okay, so I really do think that there will be an advantage to that, because of course big companies, and if you would really like to immerse yourself with those people, or to immerse yourself with those big companies, involve yourself in projects, activities, and whatever, you will definitely have a better resume, and that there is some sort of a disadvantage that you may have once you're in if you just live in the rural areas. And but of course that again will depend on the initiative of the student or the person. If they would like to immerse themselves in this one big company or whatnot, they would do everything just to get themselves involved with this, because of the fact that they would be able to have a better resume, have better experience in everything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
you've been very vocal with regards to people or students having initiative as a very major factor with how they will grow as a person. But do you think your socioeconomic status affect your growth as a student and how you socialize with other people?
Actually, I don't think so. I really do not think so, because for my case, I have communicated with many different people from like, I have this one friend who has his own business, or has his he owns a franchise. He owns a franchise, and his parents own a trucking company. And I don't know, we've been in the talks towards like if you were to approach people like this, most likely than not, you wouldn't just dwell on the like the friendly side of things and all the jokings and all everything. You have to make sure that you are able to establish some sort of connection with them, or some, yes, because once you're the priority that you have right now, for me as a college student, is to build your network, with many different people, because I know for sure, and this was advice given to me by a friend of mine not a friend, rather, a cousin of mine who graduated from Ateneo, um, to establish a network, establish different networks of connections with many different people uh, from rich families, those who are within those big businesses. He himself has involved himself with those, and I've been seeing quite a lot of results coming from that. And he is currently living the life, actually, if you were to ask me.
So, from all these experiences that you've been sharing, I think it's safe to say, would you deem yourself as a social butterfly?
Oh, social butterfly, I guess. So yeah, pretty much. I'm not afraid to talk to people, to establish some sort of rapport to other people. And sa GC pa lang sa GC pa ng block ko, I am not afraid to say anything, or to or to
To
okay,
just basically socialize with
guys,
them. Yeah,
because you
just
guys
to
are
build
not.
relationships.
Yeah,
So,
just cut this, guys. Just cut this, guys. I would like to say that I would also give give some sort of feedback towards our profs. With our profs were quite meh. Our profs were quite meh, and I would be vocal about their flaws and everything, and why we are not we are not learning with their subjects because of the way they teach, something like that. But yeah, pretty much I'm not so scared naman to talk to other people.
but it's good to know that you're adept in socializing with others. So, with that, how different was the community between urban and rural? or at least the
Um,
academic community with regards to students, teachers, and admins, or overall community?
one thing's for sure. In the rural, well, for my case, in the rural area, it's or the rural in the rural setting. When it comes to students, of course, knowing that I was able to establish a long-term connection with them, like I'm talking a decade. We're talking about a decade here, living with or seeing my classmates 20 5 times a day, 5 times a week rather, but 5 times a day, 5 times a week. And as for the teachers, uh, I'm able to talk to them more because we were not so. I would say that we weren't our section wasn't we weren't too many people. There were not much people in the section, and uh, when when I talk to the teachers, since of course they're able to know who, or how do you say this, the teachers have known you for a long time already, and they know you've been there for, and knowing that they've been there for a long time, and therefore you're a bit more comfortable with them. And again, I'm able to establish a connection with them, therefore being able to talk to them about certain lessons and everything. But as opposed to the urban setting, of course, it's gonna be different. Like, they wouldn't just give you don't just give you an idea of the lesson immediately. They would have to discuss it for everything to be fair. But yeah. And wait, could you repeat that question again? I kind of want to rethink some more things. What was that again? What was that
Just
question?
generally, how different was the urban and rural academic community?
All right. Rural. Okay. So in the urban setting, naman, it's harder. No, it's a bit. It's sort of harder to build a relationship with many with the people there, because again, you most likely just met these people, and being able to establish a relationship with them, knowing that they would have many diversities, and some things may not click with you with this other person in your block. So just with that, it's different. Just with that, it's different diversities.
Right, right. So if you were asked to choose an unforgettable experience in your academic life in the rural community, what would it be?
Ah, in the rural setting, there's so many things actually, because of course, being living in the rural setting for a decade pretty much, I would say this everything we've shared, from the struggles, from all the all-nighters that we've done together. I think those were one of uh one of the biggest, most memorable memories
Yeah.
I know. And for the urban setting, is the fact that I was able actually make friends with people who were different, from different locations, from different social statuses, scholars, um pretty much everything, everybody. I was able to meet with different people, pretty much from different places. And yeah, I think that's it.
Did you ever wonder yourself, what if you didn't transfer back and forth? What if you just stayed in one place? What
um
do you see yourself as now in terms of academically? How do you see yourself?
Academically, I would say that I might have might have been less equipped with knowledge, because one thing I've noticed naman din is the education system in, of course, USC. Since it's USC, it's much better. You'd have better prerequisites once you get to college. and knowing that I most likely would have just stayed in the school Dagupan. I might have just since most of my or all of my classmates from grade 11 from grade 10 did not go to grade 11 in Ednas anymore. So most likely be in Edna School Dagupan, and knowing that I'd be in Edna School Dagupan, sure, I would still be able to make some friends and everything. But yes, in terms of academics, I wouldn't be I wouldn't be as equipped as I am today.
So, what benefits do you think both learning institutions can get from one another, like from rural to urban and urban to rural?
One thing that I would like to highlight here is personal development. Personal development, like developing yourself as a person. You most likely be of course you'd be or wiser rather. You'd be wiser if you were to if like wait, how do I say this? Knowing that I was able to live from the rural to the urban setting, I was able to transition to them back and forth. I think that I find myself to be wiser, wiser to make better decisions, wiser to control my emotions, wiser to to see things just like mistakes as development, because mistakes are the only things that will or mistake yeah mistakes are the only things that will help you grow as a person. And knowing that I've done a lot of them as I was transitioning back and forth, I think that is the one big thing that I find essential.
All right. So, do you think this standard of personal development is still possible for a student who stays in a rural area?
I would think that, like, of course, knowing that you've just stayed in the rural area, it really depends though. It really depends. Like, you can still develop personal you can still develop yourself in a rural setting, but once you get to the urban setting naman, it may be quite it may be more difficult to adapt, because of course they didn't have the experience. It'd be a miracle if they were able to adapt immediately, because things are much different in the urban setting as opposed to rural setting.
Do you think this difference of rural and urban stems more from a cultural perspective, or does the educational factor or the differences in educational institutions have a big influence on this matter?
In terms of culture, yes, there definitely will be a difference. There'll definitely be a difference, as I mentioned a while ago. But in terms of academics, it depends on the institution. It depends on the institution, because there are schools that are very well adept in terms of being able to develop their students in a more academical sense. Let's say, for example, in I know a good school in Pangasinan, Mother Goose, and I know that there were a lot of academically adept students there. And as they transition to college, the prerequisites are there to support them as they go through uh, the overall curriculum in college, pursuing their degree and everything. And kasi naman, it really depends din naman on the student, if he or she is able to focus naman on their studies and everything, and plus the good institution that they're in. Most likely than not, they'd be able to adjust to the college setting, and eventually then in real life, not in the real world, as they say.
So, how about this? If you were asked to change the way things work in either rural or urban areas, How would you reform the setting so that we could minimize the widening gap between urban and rural development?
By what do you mean by widening gap? By is it like
The general difference of the standard of education, communities, and culture, just overall, how would you help this sector?
help this sector? Oh my goodness me, this is quite difficult because when what I know about this widening gap is, uh, I guess that what people say is that people in the urban setting are able to uh, or the students overperform rather.
Mm.
Those who are in the urban setting overperform the students those in the rural setting. That's what I know. But I already explained. However, that it really depends on the student. Talaga, it really depends on the student. Talaga, if he or she is able to what they call this, develop themselves or immerse themselves to becoming a good student and a good person, then most likely than not naman they'd be able to do well naman in the future. But of course, there are people who lack the opportunity, and one of the problems to that is the government. One of the problems to that is the government, and what I've noticed so far, like from the big four, from the big four universities, pa naman, they're creating issues that the big four are recruiting NPAs and everything, and that gives a bad rep to these schools. So, ayun, where was I? Ayun, knowing that, then I really do think that as long as we sooner, hopefully by the elections, we'll be able to elect better officials who can help in prioritizing. Because what I'm seeing right now, it's we're not really. I haven't been. I besides K to 12, I really didn't see much of. I didn't see much. Call this. I didn't see much
Changes, implementations?
prioritizations.
Okay.
Yeah, prioritizations towards education, towards quality education rather. And since they're focusing on different matters, I really do think that that is one reason why the education system is quite bland and meh here in the Philippines. Yeah, pretty much it. And of course, we have to include the the fact that it also depends on the institutions per se, because rural or not, urban or not, it if this school naman is really doing their job to make their students or to make their students bloom once they get to, or prepare them once they get to the college setting.
Okay. So, just to wrap up everything we've discussed today, do you think that there is a definite gap between rural and urban education?
A
Just a
definite
simple yes or no. Yeah. Just a gap or a difference between rural and urban education.
Yeah, I really do think that there will be differences din naman of kasi we are all diverse, we all operate differently, the schools per se are also operating differently, and cultures differ from one another, especially in the urban setting, knowing that most likely than not that your peers, your classmates, your blockmates would come from different places, different personalities, different beliefs, different political views. um, yes, I think there is a definite gap.
Okay. Do you have any idea where this gap stems from, or what is the root cause of this unequal standard of rural and urban areas?
Oh, the root to all of these things. I don't really think we can find a definite gap, or definite, I mean, a root cause to everything, because there are just so many things that are going on, and all of these factors, as you mix them all in, is the is the root cause to all of these things that are happening, to why there is this gap that we're seeing.
It really is hard to pinpoint where this root cause is, or where this issue of education stems from. The gap between rural and urban standards will still be continue to be questioned on, but unfortunately, that is all the time we have for this interview. Again, Kristen, we greatly appreciate and thank you for coming to our podcast. Your insights has given us a lot to some of the country's education disparities between rural and urban areas.
Thank you, everyone, for coming today, and we greatly appreciate your support.
Again, today, our guest today is Christan Sam Castro. Thank you for joining us in today's episode. For our listeners, don't forget to follow us on social media to keep up with the latest notifications from our posts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify, like our Facebook page. Links are down below or in the description. Again, my name is Samuel Torres along with my co-host.
Tina Silverio,
And
this
this
has
has been
been
the EduCASTsyon
EduCASTsyon
podcast.
Podcast. Bye.
All right.
Thank you for listening.